Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the regular City Council meeting of September 25th, 2018. As soon as Councilmember Garcia is ready, we'll get started. Well, actually, let me address one thing in regards to the open forum. We have several items on the agenda this evening involving some housing ordinances and everything we're passing. We've got 4 people that would like to speak to it. Ordinarily, we exercise some flexibility in accepting open forum discussions about things that are on the agenda. To be fair, I was told that we've been asked about whether or not we're going to open it up for comments if it's already on the agenda, and the 4 that I've got appear to be speaking. One is to thank us and just to continue to advance the housing ordinances and everything we're trying to do to make sure that there's housing for everybody. But we also received a request from an organization that doesn't necessarily represent the landlords, but wanted to make some comments also. And this is not an open meeting. It's on the agenda. What I would suggest is we move forward. There's going to be continued conferences, meetings, and discussions about housing, affordable housing, and the mix of housing that we want in Richfield. So I think that we're not going to entertain any comments on things on the agenda this evening, but I want to continue the dialogue, keep it open all the time, contact staff, contact elected officials, so we can keep the ball moving forward, but we're just not going to engage in that this evening. So thank you. With that being said, I would ask that you all stand and do the Pledge of Allegiance with us. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. At this time, I would move the approval of the minutes of the Special City Council work session of September 11th, 2018, Special Concurrent City Council and Planning Commission work session of September 11th, 2018, and the regular City Council meeting of September 11th, 2018.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Minutes are approved. At this time, Councilmember Reagan Gonzalez will introduce the Commissioner of the Advisory Board of Health for an annual meeting with them and the board and the council.
Hi everybody, I'm Maria and I am the liaison for our Advisory Board of Health, and I'd like to ask Chris and Jennifer to please come up and have our meeting, that we have our annual joint meeting. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I'm Christine Close, and I'm chair of the Advisory Board of Health. And on behalf of the Advisory Board of Health, I'd like to thank you all and thank the City Council for letting us share our highlights from 2017. So each year we provide a report of what we've done, and one of the things is we always have a member on the State Community Health Services Advisory Committee, or what we call SHAC. So basically that's a forum for communication between the Minnesota Department of Health and then local health departments, which is us, the Advisory Board of Health. So Rose Jost is our member who serves on this forum, and she brings back the issues and the awareness of the impact on health and all policies from that meeting each time. And so then we try and think of that when we work for Richfield. On the next page, we have Tobacco 21. So it was in 2017 where several members expressed an interest in learning about Tobacco 21. And we used Edina staff and health board members and their experiences to help inform us on how we would go about bringing Tobacco 21 to the City Council. Next, we always have a member on the Richfield Bike Advocates, and that was Chris Olson. And so the Bike Advocates work with Minneapolis, Edina, and Bloomington and Richfield to ensure bicycle connectivity through the area. And he kept us apprised of what they were doing, and I know he was very active on all their initiatives. Every year, the Advisory Board of Health gives out food safety awards, and in 2017, we gave out a food safety award for a fast food place that was Taco Bell, located at 7740 2nd Avenue South. And then we also give a food safety award for full service, and that was Cadao Express at 6637 Penn Avenue South. And we thank you because we presented their awards here in front of you all, and I know that they enjoyed that. I'm also reporting on the tobacco and alcohol compliance checks. So in 2017, we had no failures. The businesses looked at personal IDs and had a check for everyone that came in. Every year, we also participate in the Richfield Public Schools Community Wellness Expo. So one of us usually serves on their planning committee, and then we help out during the expo. So it's a big health fair for Richfield citizens and for Richfield school kids. And in 2017, the Advisory Board of Health also donated prizes for outdoor play for all the kids. Annually, we also have a table at the Open Streets at Penn Fest. So in 2017, we partnered with the Richfield Arts Commission, and we had trivia, Richfield Trivia. So it's centered around the history of Richfield, current policies of Richfield, whether you could have chickens or not in Richfield. And so people came up and spun a wheel, and that gave them their category. I'd like to thank the council members that gave us some questions and answers for themselves. So, for instance, Edwina Garcia collects Hopalong Cassidy memorabilia, and that was one of our trivia questions. So it made it more personal to have council members participate. So thank you so much. And then lastly, for our Advisory Board of Health meetings in 2017, we try and keep apprised of the issues that are in Richfield. So we had meetings with Bloomington Public Health. We had meetings with the Minnesota Coalition for the Homeless. We had meetings with the Richfield Police Department, the Richfield Health Resource Center, and then the City of Edina Community Health Committee. So in talking with them and our partners, then we can know what's going on in Richfield and kind of figure out where we can help out. So we're way into 2018, so I just wanted to just let you know what we're working on right now. So we got the health equity data analysis report that you all got about a month ago, and so right now we're researching whether we can make a positive impact with that. And we started at this year's Penn Fest, so we had a table and we basically asked, I'm gonna hold this down for. We asked Richfield residents what a healthy home means to them. And so kids took part, adults took part, and we got a lot of different responses. Everything from green spaces and walkability and clean sidewalks to no mold. Someone wanted a pool. So, but clean vents. It was being kind, love, family. So there were a lot of nice and a wide variety of things that Richfield citizens thought made a healthy home to them. And so this year, I think we'll be focusing on that, and we're going to see how we can fit into that. So on behalf of the Advisory Board of Health, again, thank you, and thank you, Maria, for being our liaison, and I'd like to thank Jennifer for being our staff liaison. And we hope we can continue to be effective and helpful next year. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, the commission always has been a huge benefit to the community and a service to the community, so thank you very much. Comments?
Yes, I just wanted to say a couple things. So a lot of our residents don't know that we have something extremely special that most other cities in the state do not have, which is a municipally based public health department. Most public health departments are county based. The Richfield has our public health services and health services specifically tailored to the city of Richfield. That is of huge benefit to our residents. It's not it's much less of a one-size-fits-all, but everything they do is completely tailored to the demographics, the population here in Richfield. And because of that, and because the quality of the health department is so excellent, they've had a long history of leading the way on a lot of public health initiatives. And a lot of times public health initiatives go unseen because they're preventative. So public health does the work before it escalates into a huge issue. And just a few examples of how we have been leading the way in the public health world, which has been led by this group, is the Tobacco 21 ordinance that was recently passed, the dementia-friendly designation. So we are coming together as a community to make sure that Richfield is a welcoming, educated, and compassionate community for our seniors, and especially those who are experiencing dementia. The impacts of health in housing. These are all things that most communities are not leading on, and Richfield is leading the way in these areas. And several years ago, and another example was health in all policy. So how do we look at all of the different parts of our city and how health is implicated? So we were the first bike-friendly designated suburban community in Minnesota to be recognized for the walkability and bikeability of Richfield. This is all public health. These are things that go unseen, but I just want to let Richfield residents know that we have an excellent public health department and an advisory board of health. So thank you for your work.
Thank you. Any other comments?
No, I just wanted to mention, we have such a beautiful relationship with Bloomington. And, you can, our Jennifer Anderson, and, it's just very important that we continue that relationship, and that you come on a yearly basis to tell us what you're doing and to report, and it's very much appreciated.
I think I just echo what Council member Reagan Gonzalez said, and it maybe I missed it. It wasn't in the report, but it is such a big deal that we're becoming a dementia-friendly city and taking a leadership role there. And by destigmatizing that end-of-life disease, we're just creating more access in a broader community for our Richfield residents and people that visit Richfield. So really appreciate what our health commission and our public health team and Jennifer, you're doing. Thank you so much.
Thank you all. Next item on the agenda is hats off to Hometown Hits. I think I'll jump right back to Councilmember Reagan Gonzalez and let her start us out this evening.
I just have a couple things. I was recently at Wood Lake Nature Center just yesterday, and their fall program is out, so you guys can go to the Nature Center or go look online. There's so many programs at our Wood Lake Nature Center for kids, for families, for seniors, for adults. It's a beautiful time of the year to be outside, so please go to Wood Lake and check out all the great activities, the beautiful leaves, the nature. But there's several things going on right now. Also, we have our upcoming autumn wine tasting with the Richfield Foundation happening on October 11th at 6:30, again at Wood Lake Nature Center. So you can go to the Richfield Foundation's website, which is richfieldfoundationmn.org, and sign up and buy your tickets. And lastly, unlike Councilmember Garcia, I will not take everybody's hats off to Hometown Hits. I will save some for you all. But I will add one more thing. I do want to say thank you very much to the Richfield Bloomington Honda and our Chamber of Commerce. Richfield Bloomington Honda will be donating $10,000 to our public schools, to our middle school specifically. And again, it just highlights all of the different partnerships in the community of Richfield that make this city such a great place for everyone to be in, but including our business partners. So again, thank you to Richfield Bloomington Honda for donating $10,000 to our middle school.
Councilmember Howard.
I just have a couple items. One, I wanted to thank everyone in the community that helped plan and then attended Penn Fest a couple Sundays ago. It feels like it was about 85 degrees warmer that day than it is today. But we still had great turnout. Folks all up and down the street, despite the weather, despite a Vikings-Packers game. And just people were still in good spirits And only some of us forgot to wear sunscreen. So, all in all, an excellent event. And then one event coming up, I want to mention that also signals the change in season. The annual pumpkin patch begins next weekend, the 29th, September 29th, at Veterans Park. And for folks that haven't partaken in this, if you head to Veterans Park, there's a pumpkin patch to pick up your pumpkin for the year, and there's some fun inflatables for the kiddos and hay rides. It's a pretty good time, and that'll run Saturday and Sunday through the end of October. And so have some fun and get out to the pumpkin patch.
Thank you. Councilmember Troutman.
Thank you. Well, I won't double dip on any of the activities mentioned, except for one. For all the volunteers that showed up for PennFest, huge commitment, and they're just it's really hard to underestimate how many people it takes to just make a great time for between 6,000 and 8,000 of our fellow residents. So hats off to Ward 1, hats off to Penn Central, hats off especially the folks like Gordon Hansen and folks at Posters on Board, and all the folks that volunteered for that. Thank you guys. So the one additional hats off that I'll mention, hats off to our winter basketball league for our young boys and girls. So this is the first year we're signing up our oldest. It's something that I participated in when I was my oldest son's age, and my wife, she did show choir, she did drama when she was growing up. But the things that you learn when you have an opportunity to participate in sports, there are lots of different channels. It's 2 nights a week, but it's really a transformative opportunity to learn about leadership, to learn about teamwork, to learn how to win, to learn how to lose well. Just tremendous, and it's a very reasonable price, and I think there are some opportunities if that price is a barrier. So if you have children that could benefit in those areas, I just encourage folks to make the investment and sign up at the Boys and Girls Basketball Association websites. And early bird fees are available up through October 1st.
Thank you. Councilmember Garcia.
Okay, I want to start by wishing you, Mayor, and Maria Reagan Gonzalez a happy birthday.
All right.
Of course, Pat thinks that they're the same age, but they're not.
You know, the benefit of being born on September 22nd, though, is I can pick and choose my birth sign. Because in Mexico, I'm a Libra. In America, I'm a Virgo. So I just look at both and pick whichever one's going to work best for me that day. So there's a benefit to that.
Good, okay. The community center will continue its Dear Santa program. And if you have a child that's between the ages of 3 and 8, have them write a letter to Santa, take it to the community center, and the community center will make sure Santa gets it. And you know, you'd be surprised. Kids really enjoy doing that. On October the 6th, the League of Women Voters is having their forum before the election, and what they're going to wind up having is just the legislative candidates. Okay, here's a really good one that needs our attention. Our History Center is having their annual dinner at the American Legion, October the 13th, and that starts from 5:30 to 6. And you know, we really have got to support our historical society, because it really operates on just very little money. So anything that we can do, you know, if you become a member, and you can become a member by whatever donation you make, it doesn't matter, but become a member and help us out. Okay, and then October 17th, the History Center, or you know, the Historical Society, we'll have at the community center, so the History Center goes to the community center, and they will be having their presentation. Every month they do a little presentation on one thing or another. This month it's going to be Richfield from village to city. So that's a fun, because everybody keeps asking, well, whatever happened? How come we got so small if we were so large to begin with? That's the time to go and ask questions. Anyway, that dinner will be at the American Legion. So, and then Pilgrim's Dry Cleaners is collecting coats for kids. So if you have any extra coats, and and I don't know why they would just say for kids, because there's big kids, little kids, whatever. Just whatever you have for coats, please take them to Pilgrim Cleaners. And this is now through October 13th. And that will help them out. Don't forget that the Richfield Farmers Market is still going on Saturday. And then I wanted to mention another thing is that last week, or was it this week, that we had Senator Amy Klobuchar, Senator Tina Smith, then a senator from Nevada, Senator Cortez, and we had some state senators, and they had a meeting. It was one of those, let's motivate people, get out and vote, whichever way you want to vote. But at least let's be conscious that this is a very important election. And it was really a nice, motivating meeting. All the presenters were very good. Of course, my Councilmember Reagan Gonzalez was excellent. And, here we are. And what that means, I always kind of go to whoever's representing us and say, now you will not forget Richfield, will you? Because that's so darn important. We've had representation, that people that are supposed to represent Richfield, and they do zip, nothing. So I've kind of made up my mind that I'm going to be in touch with all these people, and when we need something, and kind of make sure it happens, because we elect folks and we expect for them to deliver. That's about it.
Thank you. Right now, I'm going to exercise the autonomy of the office of mayor and change my mind a little bit. I went back over and looked at the open forum registration cards, and then leaned over and talked to my mentor, Councilmember Garcia. And with all due deference to Mr. Whalen and Mr. Sater, your requests were kind of directly related to some of the items on the agenda. So Ben, first I would thank you for thanking us for working on, and also incorporating some of your clarification changes into what we're going to be passing this evening. So thank you. Mr. Sater, it looks like you wanted to talk a little bit about the tenant protective ordinances that are going to be put in place. I appreciate your willingness to stand up and talk about it, but we're going to do that, so I'm going to reserve that, and I thank you both for submitting the request. The other two that I'm going to ask to come up and take my time rather than me offering Hopetown hits is Mr. Onasorga and Mr. Perez. What your items was, number one, access to housing, and number two, changing the narrative about tenants. Those aren't on the agenda. I think they're important items, so I'm going to ask you both to step up, and we're going to reinstate the open forum for a little bit just so you have an opportunity to speak. So Mr. Onasorga, are you still here? Oh, come on up. If you can, sign in, please, and just state your name and address. And you're limited to around 3 minutes, so.
Yeah, thank you.
And I appreciate you waiting after I said you couldn't talk.
I appreciate that time
Sure.
here today, and I appreciate all the work you have done on this affordable housing here. I've lived in Richfield here for 20 years, and I really look forward to living here for another 20. The unfortunate fact about it is, when you look at affordable housing, it doesn't look at accessible housing. units with 0 threshold entrances, 0 threshold bath. And that's just where I'd really like you guys to focus on in the next part of this affordable housing, because affordable doesn't mean access. Accessible housing right now is at 2% vacancy. Affordable for accessible housing is at 0.00. So it's a very big difference. So that's the main point that I wanted to bring up here tonight, and that we keep allowing the renters to come to the table and give our voice of opinions, because some of what you don't see can only come from tenants themselves.
Thank you very much, appreciate it. I think that we need to be reminded that affordable doesn't equate to accessible. So I think we need to keep that message in front of us.
I have one choice for another unit, Rich. That's it, right?
Okay.
I would like to be able to, before I move from Richfield or remove from this life here, that somebody has at least 3.
Well, let's see if we can't change that. All right, thank you very much, appreciate it. Mr. Perez?
Hello?
Hi.
Thanks for changing your mind. I think it's really cool that...
If I'm not, I'm nothing but flexible, so.
This is my first year in Richfield as a homeowner. I've been a tenant all of my life. Well, my life in the US, I guess. I lived at home in Mexico with my parents, so I'm an immigrant as well. And through this work, I have come to realize what richness and wealth we have with our tenants, and how rich and what community looks like at apartment complexes. And it's been really transformative work. I'm really proud that Richfield is yet another city to join the list of cities that are passing this ordinance. I think it sends a really clear message to our community. And also, I want to show off the fact that in Richfield, we have something about language in our ordinance with the tenant protection, the 90-day. And that's something that no other city in Hennepin County has under their belt. So I think that we're coming up also as people who think about those who are most vulnerable. And that's what it's all about, is changing the narrative about who tenants are, what kind of protections they need to have, stable housing. There's some statistics out there that show that kids that need to be moving from school to school due to displacement have less educational achievement than the ones that live in stable housing. And that to me, it's really hard to know, to understand, because tenants that I know are Latino, are immigrant community, and to know that they, just because they rent, have less chances of being successful at school, it's really hard. So this kind of ordinance is really helping change that narrative and help those communities thrive and be more successful. So appreciate the time, and thank you.
Thank you very much, appreciate it. Next item on the agenda is approval of the agenda. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
The agenda is approved. Consent calendar for the city manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, for those in the audience here and those in the audience at home. The consent calendar contains several separate items which are acted upon by the City Council in one motion. And once the consent calendar has been approved, all the individual items and their recommended actions will also have been approved and will require no further action. We start with item A tonight, consideration of the approval of a contract renewal with Odessa, Minneapolis for the 2018-19 auctioning of forfeited vehicles from Public Safety Police. Item B, consideration of the approval of an agreement between the Hennepin County Human Services and Public Health Department and the City of Richfield Police Department for continuing funds for a police cadet and/or a community service officer position and the Joint Community Police Partnership Training for 2019. Item C, consideration of the approval of a first reading of a transitory ordinance vacating 64th Street right-of-way between 16th Avenue and Richfield Parkway and scheduling a public hearing and second reading for October 9th, 2018. Item D is consideration of the adoption of a resolution certifying delinquent water, sanitary sewer, and stormwater charges to the Hennepin County Auditor to be included in the property owner's annual property tax bill. And then finally, item E, consideration of the approval of rejecting all bids for roof replacement, mechanical cooling units, and related electrical work for the municipal liquor store at 7700 Lindale Avenue South. And that concludes tonight's consent calendar.
Thank you. I would move the consent calendar.
Second.
Any comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Consent calendar is passed. Next item on the agenda is item 6, belongs to Councilmember Garcia.
Thank you, Mayor. Lakes Buffet was granted a variance allowing the restaurant to open without installing odor control equipment. And the reason that it was, wait a minute. I'm going to take off my glasses so I can read. Lakes Buffet was considered a pre-existing restaurant, and the ordinance states that the subsequent complaints of odor impacts may result in a, where in the world am I? I should probably read it from my, let's see. Why don't I start at the beginning? Lakes Buffet was granted a variance allowing the restaurant to open without installing an odor control equipment. Lake Buffet was considered a pre-existing restaurant. It had Old Country Buffet.
Councilmember Garcia, would it be helpful if I read if your eyes are giving you a hard time?
And anyway, okay, now you got me all. And what's required, okay. So the ordinance states that subsequent complaints of odor impacts may result in the requirement that the plant control device be installed. So Lake Buffet opened for business. The city received a number of complaints almost right away regarding cooking odors. So at first notice of the requirement to install odor control equipment within 90 days was sent by the mail on April the 26th. A second notice was sent June 13th, reminding Lake Buffet of the July 26th deadline. A mechanical permit application was submitted on August the 3rd, and the permit was ready for issuance on September the 7th. Upon the issuance of the permit, the city extended the deadline for installation by an additional 30 days with a new deadline of August the 26th of this year. That deadline has now passed, and the city has received no further communication from Lakes Buffet representatives as to when installation could be expected to occur. So for this reason, we are hereby sending notice that noncompliance with city ordinance will result in revocation of the conditional use permit, which allow the restaurant to operate. If installation has not been completed by September the 20th, the City Council will hold a public hearing to consider revocation of the conditional use permit on Tuesday, September the 25th. So before I turn it over there to Mr. Stark, I think Lakes Buffet has been really successful in terms of the people that it serves, and it's a good restaurant. But yet, when you're there, when for a neighborhood meeting or just walking around to see, the odor is very pungent, whatever. And so I can see that. I don't think I'd want to be a neighbor that lives there and have to absorb all that odor. So, Mr. Stark, why don't you continue with what's going on?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Mayor and council members. As Councilmember Garcia said, this first came to you in May of last year. It was a little bit of an odd situation because there had been a pre-existing restaurant, the Old Country Buffet, that had been vacant just a hair more than a year, a year and a few weeks. Normally, the pre-existing nonconformities would have expired at a year. Because they missed it by just a couple of weeks, at that point in time, staff had recommended you treat it as if Old Country Buffet had been closed less than a year, in which case the odor control criteria says pre-existing restaurant sites are required to provide plans for professionally designed odor control remedy, and subsequent complaints of odor impacts may result in the requirement that the planned odor control device be installed. And so they understood that. They understood that we weren't asking them to build the odor control right now. We were just asking them to be ready for it in case there were complaints. I would say the neighbors at that time were a little skeptical about how that would work. They asked the council and they asked staff, how many complaints do there have to be? What kinds of complaints? I will tell you that we've received complaints from 8 separate homeowners, sometimes multiple complaints. We've gone out and, sniffed it ourselves, and I'm sure others have as well. And there is a problem. There's no doubt in my mind about that. There is a problem. And the remedy that we know, the only remedy we know of is the installation of odor control devices. So we've sent 5 letters in the past few months, advising Lakes Buffet of the situation. In all of those letters, we've invited them to dialogue with us. We did receive one response back in May with their opinion that the odor was generated by the trash and not by the cooking. And I don't, that's not, after checking into it, that's not my opinion. So as I said, the only solution we know of is for them to go ahead and install the odor control that they had planned for. If they could have come to us with other potential solutions, we could have maybe thought about those, but those were never brought to our attention. So where we stand tonight is asking that they be required to install the odor control devices, or that their CUP be revoked. Let me double check that, make sure I'm using the right language. Yep, CUP and variances be revoked. What that would mean for them is that they would have to close up shop. That's how the staff report is written. As of today, I don't believe that they've purchased the odor control devices, and I don't believe, even if they went out and bought them tomorrow, that they could have them installed by the October 26th deadline. So I guess as I sit here, I'll recommend a possible change to the resolution, because I think everybody wants to see this be successful. It is, as Councilmember Garcia stated, it's a very successful restaurant despite the road construction. Once the road construction is done, I imagine they'll be even more successful. So a different way of saying this would be that they would have to purchase the odor control device by the deadline of October 26th, and then they would have 60 days thereafter to install it. That's something you could consider, because as I said, if we're just imposing an October 26th deadline, it's kind of a moot point because they haven't purchased the equipment yet, and they could never meet that deadline, I don't believe. So that's a little more background, hopefully not too much. If you've got questions for me, I'm available. I believe the restaurant ownership or management are here, and I believe there are at least a couple of neighbors here.
This is a public meeting, so if anyone wants to come up and speak, we'd appreciate it. The owners, do you want to come up and speak? Or Julie? Hi, Julie.
Just a few brief comments. Hi, I'm Julie Lipinski, 6621 Stevens Avenue. And I just wanted to make a couple comments on the impact to the neighborhood. We have had a busy summer. You know, we have the construction yard for the 66th Street project, and it's been very disruptive. But on top of that, when you just finally think, okay, this will be time limited, then you go outside, whether it's winter or summer, and you smell this heavy cooking smell. And it's really, really not a nice thing for your home that you live in 24/7, 365 to be smelling that. So I think that just kind of our key thought about this is, as we develop Richfield, it's really great. There's been a lot of really good press about the development in Richfield, but the best possible community will result from personal engagement and responsiveness, whether you're a resident or whether you're a business owner. And we have not seen this business be responsive yet, and it bothers me that you'd have to send so many notices to get any kind of communication back. That in and of itself is concerning, in my view. And that is really all I have to say, but I guess our neighborhood would really like to ensure that action is taken to correct this issue and as soon as possible. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Julie. Does anyone else want to come up and speak? How about the owners? Okay, here's Kathy.
I'm Kathy Bender, and I live over on Stevens Avenue, and I'm on the east side of Stevens, so we're basically almost 2 blocks away from the restaurant, and we can smell it in our backyard. Now, I just want to point out that if this was a homeowner, and we didn't pay our bills or we didn't get our permits, I believe we would start getting fined. Why is this business getting all these extensions, whereas they're a business, they knew that this was coming? And when are we going to put the residents' inconvenience above the businesses? I mean, I'm all for development in Richfield. I think it's a great city, but if this now that they have another 2 months to put it in, so then it's over a year that you had your first complaint from the restaurant, from the residents, that's inexcusable. I mean, if I was running a business, I wouldn't expect my customers to wait that long to pay to have something installed. So we need to move this forward, and I think that we should start fining them and give them a financial incentive to get this work done, because they've had many, many communications to tell them that they have to do it. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else want to get up and speak? How about the owners?
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, I would suggest, since we've been dealing with this for so long, I would suggest that rather than asking the owners to come up, I would direct the owners to come up. I do think they owe some comment to the city and to the neighbors as to what they plan on doing.
Right.
You know, I'm not going to order anybody to do anything. If they don't want to come up and speak to us, then the consequences are on them, not us. And what I would like to, well, if anybody else going to come up for the public meeting? If not, I would move to close the public meeting.
Okay, all in favor?
I need a second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
With that being said, I have a distinct recollection both of attending the Planning Commission meeting when they were before them requesting the variance, and when they came before us and the representations, and when a number of the neighbors talked about their concerns. And the variance was important because they didn't fit within the year. And I think the Planning Commission gave them their first break in that situation and allowed it, even though I think it was 14 or 15 months after the prior restaurant had closed down. Now, and I remember distinctly a Planning Commission member, a year is a year. A year and a day is not what the ordinance says, yet they still did it. So we were accommodating to the fact that the building had been vacant for a while. They were represented as good owners and everything, and obviously they're running a good restaurant in terms of attendance and revenue. I agree that we listened to the people and made a commitment and had a dialogue and a discussion about how many complaints are enough. And 8 or 9 from separate households certainly is more than enough. The attempt to try to cajole them into do what they promised to do if in fact the odors were a problem fell on deaf ears. I think that I don't know that we're in a position to fine them per day, per week, per month. If we can't, then I think I'm inclined to follow Mr. Stark's recommendation and say it has to be purchased. I mean, because once the commitment is made and they've got the equipment, it's going to go in. But no more breaks, no more alternative conditions, no more excuses. We made a commitment to the neighbors that came and testified before us that we weren't going to allow it to interfere with the quiet enjoyment of their neighborhood, and we've done that. So I'm not, if there is a physical and mechanical impossibility to purchase and get it installed by October 26th, I'm inclined to adopt Mr. Stark's amendment that it has to be purchased, and purchase to me means that the installation starts immediately after it gets delivered on site, and we'll continue to monitor. No second chances, no third chances. You get it done, you do what you promised the neighbors. If you don't, then don't bother coming back. That's all I've got to say.
Well, I also think that, it's about time maybe we look at that policy and adjust it somewhat, because even if it's possible, and I don't know that it is, but, if they don't you give them so much time, and if they don't comply, they start racking up a fine. And I don't know if you can find them. Mary?
Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Garcia, I think we would have to take a look at the ordinances on that.
Okay.
In order to impose fines, you need explicit authority, either under state law or under the city code. And I don't know that explicit authority exists to begin imposing monetary fines on a business. But that's certainly something that we could take a look at.
Okay. John?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor and council members, one of the things I don't want to see happen is that if the motion that I've mentioned that the mayor discussed as well, if that were to pass, I don't want to see any gray area on whether they purchase the equipment or not. It's got to be purchased in full, all of the equipment, and evidence provided to me that satisfies me.
I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
Mr. Mayor and Mr. Stark, that was going to be partly my question and a bit of concern. I mean, it's very concerning to me with this serious issue before us in the community that the owners aren't here to speak to us, and I'm half of a mind to just pass what's before us. But if we are going to provide something like that, I think it needs to be absolutely crystal clear, so that it's black and white. Either take this course or there's not any second chance, and we'll move forward with the revocation. So I guess my question is, does staff have guidance about how to best word the motion to make sure that we are, in clearest term possible, setting course for this to proceed?
Yeah, I would just say under the recommended action, the second sentence, which says revocation would be effective on October 26th, I would say if the odor control mechanical devices are not purchased in full as evidence to city staff, and further would be effective 60 days thereafter if such equipment is not completely installed and functioning.
Is that okay with you, Mary? Okay. Well, just exactly what Mr. Stark said. I'll move for that.
Now Mr. Stark has to write down what he just said.
so it's up to you for vote.
Okay, has the motion been made?
Yes.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Resolution is passed.
And just to clarify, I'm in opposition.
Okay.
I think we should be moving forward with the revocation. We've had these type of things before us in the past where businesses have had multiple notices and opportunities, and I have voted in support of revocation, and I think in this situation, we should be sticking with that too.
Okay, thank you. Next item on the agenda is Councilmember Troutman.
Thank you, Mayor. This is a public hearing and consideration of the adoption of a resolution for a final plat of Lindale Gardens, second edition, which will incorporate 6328 Aldrich Avenue and reconfigure existing lots and outlots of Lindale Gardens Center site to align with the approved development plans. The City Council has approved land use for the former Lindale Gardens Center site adjacent to the single-family home at 6328 Aldrich Avenue on July 26, 2018. And a preliminary plat approving the reconfiguration of the development property was approved by the council on July 10th, 2018. The final plat, now under consideration, is substantially similar with only technical modifications having been made. So we'll conduct and close a public hearing. So this is a public hearing. Are there any public comments with regards to this considered resolution? Public hearing, any comments? We'll give folks one more bite at the apple.
I'll move to close the public hearing.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Public meeting is closed.
With the public meeting being closed, I would move we adopt a resolution for a preliminary plat of, quote, Lindale Gardens second edition, end quote.
Mayor, members of the council, I do want to call your attention to the fact that there's an error in the recommended action. It should be the final plat. Your resolution is correct, and the item for consideration was correct. There's just a misprint in the action.
Can I withdraw my motion then?
You should just state final plat.
I withdraw my motion, and I would move that we adopt a resolution for a final plat of, quote, Lindale Gardens second edition, end quote.
Second.
Thank you.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Just a clarification, Ms. Peelman. A misprint blames it on the printer. Is that correct? Just curious.
Oh, no, it was my fault.
We have to have a little levity, don't we?
Absolutely.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Councilmember Troutman. Next matter on the agenda is item 8, and I believe that is Councilmember Howard.
I have the continuation of the public hearing and consideration of a preliminary plat of the Cedar Point 2 addition to October 9th, 2018. In conjunction with an application for a planned unit development at Cedar Point 2, NHH Properties LLC, the applicant will be replatting the site. The plat will combine up to 29 parcels and vacated right-of-way to allow for construction of a multifamily apartment and townhome project along the 6300 and 6400 blocks of 16th Avenue and Richfield Parkway. Negotiations with 2 of the 3 remaining private owners are underway, and if negotiations are successful, the applicant, NHH Properties LLC, will be able to include these properties in the preliminary plat and reduce additional work and permitting complications. And for this reason, the applicant has requested that consideration be continued. A preliminary plat is required prior to issuance of building permits. And so with that, I would move to continue the public hearing to consider a resolution for a preliminary plat of the Cedar Point 2 addition to October 9th, 2018.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Motion is continued. Next item, item 9, Councilmember Reagan Gonzalez.
The next item is the consideration of the approval of a variety of land use approvals related to the proposal to construct 218 apartments and 72 townhomes along 16th Avenue and Richfield Parkway between approximately Taft Park and 65th Street. The executive summary is a little long, but we have also been in the process with this development for a very long time, and it is informational and helpful, so I am going to go through it. NHH Properties LLC has assembled a team that is proposing to redevelop the area south of Taft Park and immediately adjacent to Cedar Point Commons commercial area as multi-family housing. This area has been a redevelopment priority for Richfield City Council for many years, and as a result of the airport expansion in the early 2000s. The proposed development includes 2 4-story apartment buildings along Richfield Parkway and 18 4-unit buildings of for-sale townhomes along 16th Avenue. The development has been designed to provide an enhanced buffer from the airport for the older single-family homes to the west, but also to create a cohesive neighborhood feel and transition between the existing homes and the new development. A sidewalk and boulevard trees along 16th Avenue create a walkable and friendly environment. Where possible, end townhome units have entrances facing 16th Avenue as well as sidewalk connections. While the orientation of the townhome driveways onto the 16th Avenue will significantly increase the traffic on this street, the traffic will remain below engineering thresholds for road designs or operation modifications. Staff is in favor of this orientation because it serves as a way to integrate the new development into an existing neighborhood rather than create a new development that is isolated from existing homes. The large apartment buildings are oriented towards the commercial development to the east, allowing surface parking to be hidden between the 2 halves of the development and keeping the traffic primarily on Richfield Parkway. Additional parking is provided beneath the 2 apartment buildings. Parking is provided at ratios that meet the code requirement. The development provides a number of amenities to its residents, including a pool, fitness center, club room, green space, but also provides attractive connections between single-family homes and commercial district. The proposal includes attractive streetscapes, a central plaza offering a convenient route through the site to the commercial uses, public art at key intersections, and a pocket park that will provide convenient rest areas for users of the Three Rivers Trail. The city has been working to redevelop the Cedar Corridor area since the Minneapolis-St. Paul Airport expanded in the early 2000s. A number of homes were purchased with the state and federal airport noise mitigation money, but both money and the market dried up and that work came to a halt. Additional homes were purchased when this section of Richfield Parkway was constructed, but many homeowners in the area have been waiting for years to be purchased. At the time this report is being written, the developer has purchase agreements for all but 3 of the remaining privately owned homes, all on the southern half of the development area. The owners of the two of the 3 properties are currently considering offers, and the developer will be prepared to update the city on the status of these properties on September 25th. If the developer is unable to purchase these remaining homes, townhome units could be built around these individual homes. In conjunction with the proposed new construction, the developer is proposing changes to 65th Street intersection at Richfield Parkway and 16th Avenue. The proposed changes are intended to allow townhome residents to access the development via 16th Avenue rather than just Richfield Parkway. The proposal will allow traffic to turn west from Richfield Parkway onto 65th Street, but the roadway will be modified to slow traffic by narrowing the right-of-way and installing a 4-way stop at 65th Street and 16th. Cut-through traffic led to a roadway modification when Target and Home Depot initially opened. Since that time, the Richfield Parkway has been constructed and now provides a much more attractive route to enter and exit the commercial area. A study of how traffic in the area is expected to flow is forthcoming. Based on the information, the engineering staff will work with the developer on the design of 65th Street. Staff finds that the proposed project meets the intent of the Cedar Corridor Master Plan and the code requirements, and therefore recommends approval of the proposed project. So after that long description, I'll pass it over to staff.
Mayor, members of the council, I don't have anything to add. The development team here is here tonight. If you have any questions for them, or I would be happy to answer any code-related questions.
We've talked with the development staff on numerous occasions, and I guess that I have no questions. I just am happy that you're here and we've reached this point. It's been a long, rocky road, but about 18 months ago, I met with you guys and you put a new plan together, and you're here and it's moving forward, and I'm as excited now as I was then, so congratulations. Anybody?
Okay, with that, I would like to approve an ordinance amending Appendix 1 of the Richfield City Code to change the zoning designation of Blocks 1 and 2, Iverson Second Edition, from MR3 High Density Residential to PMR Planned Multi-Unit Family Residential.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And then,
Oh, did we?
Oh,
Mr. Mayor, do we have, procedurally, do we have to close a public hearing, conduct and close?
is it a public hearing? Because is that also a printing mistake?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
It didn't seem like it was.
The public hearing was held at the Planning Commission.
Yeah, okay.
Yes.
So no
Got it.
that's what I thought.
Okay.
All right. And then I will just make the second motion to adopt a resolution approving a planned unit development, conditional use permit, and final development plan for a multifamily apartment and townhome development to be built on the property legally described as Block 1 and 2 Iverson Second Edition.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Ordinance and resolution are both passed. Thank you. Thank you, guys and girls. Next item on the agenda is Councilmember Howard.
I have.
Apologize, hold on, yes. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Councilmember Howard.
I have item number 10, which is consideration of the approval of the second reading of an ordinance adopting a new city code, section 409, relating to the sale of affordable rental housing and establishing notice and relocation assistance requirements for new owners. In recent years, naturally occurring affordable housing in Richfield and throughout the metro area has become vulnerable to being purchased, renovated, with rents raised sometimes significantly. And while investment in our rental housing stock is welcomed, the increased rents that occur when NOAA is converted to market rate housing has displaced countless residents from their homes. With low vacancy rates and a lack of new affordable units being constructed across the metro area, this displacement has had a devastating impact on low-income households who call rental housing their home in Richfield. Much of Richfield's rental housing is considered NOAA housing, and the city desires to protect this valuable resource and to provide housing stability and protections to the residents who live in this affordable housing. The city has spent over a year considering a variety of tools and strategies to preserve the city's NOAA housing. The proposed tenant protection ordinance that we're discussing here tonight is one of these tools. The first tenant protection ordinance in the metro area was developed by a group of rental property owners and renters and tenant advocacy organizations and adopted by the city of St. Louis Park. And the ordinance here tonight is largely based on that work. Under the proposed tenant protection ordinance, new owners of rental housing, defined as buildings with 3 or more units, will be required to provide a 3-month protection period, 90 days, following the sale of a property, during which time new owners must provide financial compensation to tenants if they do any of the following 3 things. 1, terminate a rental agreement without just cause. 2, raise the rents. Or 3, initiate a new screening process that results in terminating an existing tenant's lease. So if an owner does any of these 3 things during the protection period, they must pay relocation assistance to the displaced tenants equal to 3 months contract rent. The new owner will be required to send notice to the tenant within 30 days of closing on the property, informing them of the new ownership, whether or not any of these 3 things will occur during the 3-month protection period, and if they intend to do them following the expiration of the 90 days, the protection period. We had a first reading 2 weeks ago and received additional feedback on the ordinance, and further refinements have been made to clarify the language and requirements and to ensure some consistency between Richfield's ordinance and the versions being adopted by other cities. So a red line copy of that ordinance is attached, and I've read through those, and it seems like I want to thank those for the feedback. I think it's a stronger ordinance, able to clarify a few pieces. The effective date of this ordinance would be January 1st, 2019. And that's the end of the executive summary. I will turn it over to staff for any additional comments before I'm sure council members want to speak to this as well.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, I don't have any additional things to add, but if you have questions, both I and the city attorney are available to answer those questions.
Well, I guess could we speak with some specificity to the changes just for folks that are following this closely and have suggested in terms of between first reading and second reading, some of the language that was clarified?
You want me to walk through those?
Sure,
Okay,
I think that would be
sure.
helpful.
Sure, I think the first item is something we've been working on. The other cities' ordinances had what I thought was sort of an overly complicated formula in determining what relocation was, and I wanted it to be something that would grow or change over time without having to change the ordinance. And so we had proposed using a tenant's monthly rent, and we just were wrestling with how to best word that so that it's very clear if somebody were receiving a rental subsidy that it's not what they pay, but it's what that monthly contract rent is. So we just have been going back and forth with various folks to just try to make sure that's very clear. So that was the first item. And then in terms of tenant protection period, Mary and I have just sort of struggled with understanding, wanting to state it in a way that's just really clear and easy to explain to someone who has bought a new property. And, basically we've kind of been playing around with the words and want it to be very clear. If you buy a property on October 3rd and you send out notice on October 15th, the tenant protection period goes for 3 months, but then to the end of that month, so that we don't have people forced to move in the middle of a month. That's just not practical. I mean, it's unlikely that an owner would do that because they don't want people moving in mid-month, but we needed the ordinance to be clear about that. The other thing that we wanted to clarify was just what transfer of ownership meant. So we were kind of going back and forth with some folks about is it when you close on a property? Is it, when exactly does that occur? And so we kind of fussed around with that and worked with one of the real estate attorneys at Kennedy and Graven to, again, clarify that. Just really wanting it to be clear. We have to administer this ordinance, and the clearer we are, the easier it is to do and to make sure that it's going to happen. So let's see. We also wanted to make it clear if the new owner decided to change terms on a tenant and those terms happen during that protection period, forcing the person to leave, whether it's the owner who says, yep, you've got to leave, or the tenant who realizes, I can't live here anymore. We also wanted to clarify that, when that relocation benefit would happen. And let's see, subdivision 2 of 409.03, that was a provision that we had misunderstood in the St. Louis Park ordinance. We thought it was allowing basically the new owner to change their minds and send a second notice, and that was pointed out that really causes a lot of confusion. Does that mean a new period starts? Does that mean, what does that mean? And so we just realized it was a lot clearer to just not have that. You send out one notice, that's your intent, it's 90 days, period, and allowing that kind of wiggle room was just going to be causing confusion for everybody. And then the language requirement, we just accepted some advice on that and how to state that, that if English is not your native language and you feel you need it in a different language, you have the right as a tenant to ask your landlord to provide it for you. And I would just note that, we plan to provide some technical assistance to folks with that in terms of where you can get something translated, providing that initial statement in the languages that we expect so that we can help make sure that happens. So I think that So again, they were technical changes. I think last time we said that some of them might have been more substantive, but the more we reviewed and took a look at the ordinance, the more we decided, no, they're purely about making this a clear ordinance. This is new stuff. And so ordinance writing is more of an art than a science. And so we did our best. And yeah, we think that these were all improvements that will help us to administer it.
Great, thank you.
Councilmember Howard, if I may, and I guess I just would like to add that one of the first amendments to this artful work may well be Mr. Onsorgy's recommendation that apply the ordinance not only to affordable housing, but to accessible apartments also.
Absolutely, yeah.
So you that will be here are charged with that duty.
Well, I mean, I'll get to this when I'm sure other council members want to speak, but this is definitely a first step, right? And that's definitely one of the next steps to continue our work. Do other council members have comments before I make the motion?
I would just like to say I have been waiting for this vote for a very long time. I'm very excited. We have been working on this as a community for a long time. Richfield and the whole country is facing a huge affordable housing crisis for renters and homeowners alike. And one of the reasons that I'm in local government and that I really enjoy it is because we are able to work in leadership together with our communities, our staff, our elected officials, and do everything we can to address our most pressing issues. So in this situation, it is our affordable housing crisis. Now, this 90-day notification period is not going to solve it, but it will really help in allowing folks, which this is happening a lot all over, and it has happened with great impact in Richfield, where folks get a notice, and it's a pretty short notice, and with a 2% vacancy rate or less, I mean, essentially, that's not 2% of what you're looking for, what you can afford, what you need. It's 2% period vacancy rate. So essentially, it's zero. So making sure that when there is an increase in rent, when there are changes made, if folks have to relocate, that they have sufficient time and they have the support and the resources to relocate and hopefully stay in their community of Richfield. This greatly impacts our schools. 34% of our households in Richfield are renters, and a much larger percentage are in our school district. So this directly impacts our students, our children, and this is something that I've said this before, but residents on the east side have talked to me several times about being concerned when they hear about new ownership. Are rents going to be raised? How much and when? And really just kind of living in fear of not knowing if they're going to be able to stay in their home or not. So I want to say this is exciting for me. I am very thankful for all the community members, the residents, the tenants, the organizations, the city staff, the council who have worked on this to really not just make this something that we write and it's vague and confusing and difficult to follow through with, but we really have worked on making it as clear and accessible as possible, knowing that we're going to have to tweak it. And we took what St. Louis Park did, and I feel like we took it to the next level of clarity and inclusion. And I look forward to seeing this through. And thank you to everybody who has worked for a long time on this ordinance. It's a big deal.
If I can just say something briefly, just to our homeowners to clarify and just simplify what this ordinance really means for all of our homeowners. I was going to mention this in the next item, but I'll mention it now. We've done really well in the last number of years, and that opportunity for us as housing values has gone up has created a huge burden for those 1 in 3 community members that don't have that benefit. And so where if the average homeowner received a benefit of on average more than $20,000, and if you sell that home, it's tax-free. And if it's leveraged, you don't pay interest on those taxes. And so if that's the case, you live in federally subsidized housing. We don't always think about those kinds of mortgage incentives as subsidized housing, but that's exactly what it is. And for all of us that are in that position, if we were given a notice of 4 weeks to find a new house in this difficult housing market, how quickly could we do that? How quickly could we adjust? And so by taking this step, this is not a beginning or an ending step, but this is a recognition of what those dynamics have. It's been great in a lot of ways for our community. We're glad that prosperity is coming to Richfield, but these steps are really important. It's a privilege to be a part of this.
And before I make the motion, just a few comments. And I think Councilmember Reagan Gonzalez said it really well when she said this is a big deal. And it's an exciting day to take this step, and so I want to just say a few thank yous to folks. One, to my colleagues on the council who for over a year have made this a priority. We've had really in-depth conversations and made clear that this is a priority to work with all of our community members to focus on what's in our power, where can we be proactive in the space of affordable housing, how can we be an advocate for our homeowners and for our renters. And so thank you to all for continuing that dialogue, and to our staff for pushing forward in new terrain. This is a new ordinance for the city of Richfield, and there's only a few other cities in the state that have pursued something like this. And it takes time to get that right, and to make sure that it fits within what we're doing in Richfield. And I feel really strongly that this is a well articulated, thoughtful ordinance that's going to help us protect renters in our community. And again, this is not a beginning or an end, but it is an important protection that we're offering to folks, because 30 days, getting a note slipped under your door, 30 days to move is just not enough time. It isn't. And to create a 90-day window is going to provide more time, hopefully more time for the advocacy groups in our community as well to provide services and resources to folks. And because at the end of the day, the work that we're trying to do and be partners in the city here is to make sure that folks have access to quality, safe, dependable housing. That's what we all want, and we want that for everyone in our community, and there's still work to be done on that. And then lastly, what I want to do is just thank all of the renters in particular that have been focused in this work and coming to meetings, sending emails, calling your council members, showing up to work sessions, and pushing us to take this step. And so before I make this motion, I just have one message to our renters here, and that's just to keep pushing, keep fighting, keep organizing, because our community is stronger tonight because of your advocacy, and there's a lot more work to do. And with that, I want to move, I will move the approval of the second reading of an ordinance adopting a new city section, Code 409, related to the sale of affordable rental housing and establishing notice and relocation assistance requirements for new owners.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Ordinance passes. Next item for consideration is item 11. Councilmember Troutman.
This item is a consideration of the adoption of a resolution approving an inclusionary affordable housing policy. On June 25th, 2013, the City of Richfield City Council adopted a housing policy vision statement that supports full range and balance of housing types that match the choices of its diverse residents. Furthermore, there have been many City Council discussions in the past 18 months related to continuing support for affordable housing. As a part of the implementation of the housing visioning statement and in conformance with the City Council direction, staff is recommending the adoption of a formal policy related to inclusionary affordable housing policy. A preliminary draft of the inclusional affordable housing policy. The policy was presented to the City Council and Richfield Housing Redevelopment Authority on July 16th, concurrent work session. Much of this policy has been consistently applied to developments receiving public assistance over the past 20 years. A formal policy will better define expectations and requirements in a more transparent manner A proposed policy would require housing developers receiving public subsidies to either make at least 20% of all housing units to be affordable to either renters earning less than 60% of the median area and income, or owners earning less than 115% of the AMI or area median income, or pledge 15% of the net present value of the subsidy they receive to Richfield Housing and Redevelopment Fund, and must provide 90-day notice of sale, and must agree not to discriminate against renters receiving rental subsidies, including Section 8 housing. And so just for clarity's sake, and staff correct me if I'm wrong, but this applies to situations where the city participates in and provides a subsidy to the developer. Is that correct?
That's correct, and that subsidy could take a lot of different forms. It could be tax increment financing. It could be us selling them a property at a discounted value. So we've tried to make it flexible in some ways because every project is different, and so we're trying to reflect that.
Thank you. Any comments from my colleagues?
Just a couple. I mean, one, this is another important step and really a value statement, I think, about how the city is going to proceed when we have redevelopment opportunities. And it is largely policy that we've been pursuing. You know, there's good examples just in recent history in terms of how the Chamberlain redevelopment occurred as an example. And putting that in writing and our values in writing as a policy is an important step and helps us kind of cement as we move forward those priorities and values. And beyond just because we've had a couple important housing items of note today, I just wanted to highlight what we've done over the last year or so, where we've been, and some of the steps next. Staff put together, and when you kind of see it all put together, you see a lot of work, a lot of effort over the last year, and then a lot more work to occur. You know, just in the last year and change, we've move forward with an advance notice of sale and non-Section 8 discrimination for HRA-funded developments. We've worked as a community with the acquisition and support at Seasons Park to keep Seasons Park affordable. Chamberlain is going to develop new units of affordable housing and improve the quality of existing affordable housing without displacing residents. We've increased funds for our Kids at Home program, which provides rental assistance to families in Richfield schools. We've committed to building permit fee reductions for the new construction and rehab affordable housing, and move forward with down payment assistance, a program to provide down payment assistance for first-time home buyers and Richfield renters. And then tonight we've just passed a tenant ordinance protection and this inclusionary housing policy. And really what that says is that this city is committed to this work. It's important for us to continue to move forward and center the stories that we're hearing from our residents in Richfield. And as we look to the future, some of the work that's been discussed at our work sessions and things to come for folks that are here to keep on the radar and for future meetings, the city's working on a fair housing policy and doing work to identify potential buildings that are at risk for being purchased and redeveloped, and trying to develop a policy and some best practices for how to be best prepared and be an advocate for our community, and also doing research into how to use what's called 4D, a property tax status that was utilized with Seasons Park to potentially leverage more rehab of existing affordable housing, and then also researching accessible housing needs is on our to-do list as well. We've heard that tonight. So I just wanted to share that just to remind us, I guess, all, and that where we've been, where we're going, and that there's important work to be done.
If I may, Mr. Stark, I need a clarification when you were talking about subsidies, putting this policy in place. And did I hear you say that if they buy property, like if they buy a lot from HRA and it's for sale, that we can't build a move-up house on that lot because it'll exceed 115% of the AMI? It's not in there, but I thought I heard you say that that would be one of the subsidies would mandate.
Well, first of all, we sell those lots at their appraised value, and so it would only be if we sell a lot.
We sell them at a discount.
No,
at least my understanding.
we buy them with a house on them. We incurred the expense of tearing the house down, and then we sell them at their appraised value.
Okay, but you didn't make
typically.
that qualification when you said if we sell them
Yeah,
a lot.
So, you know,
Because we
and-
need
and-
to know this because that's an important part of our housing stock also.
Yep. Give me 1 second. I want to say that we had a unit count in here for this to apply because obviously 20% of one unit is hard to quantify. Secondly, I don't believe that we would consider that a land write-down. Again, we sell it at its appraised value. It'd be different if we got a property appraised, a vacant lot, after we'd demolished the house, we got it appraised at $50,000 and said, well, even though it appraises at $50,000, we're going to sell it to you for $20,000. In that case, and we do that on occasion, we do that under our new home program, which is affordable housing. We don't do that with the Richfield Rediscovered program. We sell the lots for their appraised value, which is not a land write-down, so that would not apply in that case.
Do you not think it might be well advised to put that clarification somewhere? I mean, because just the way you articulated it made me think, what are we going to tell Mr. Anderson next time he wants to build a house on a lot?
Mayor, may I ask our council, our city attorney, Tejan, when we think of the plain definition of subsidy, do you think that causes confusion or cause for confusion for selling a lot at cost? Is there a way that we can clarify that?
I was going to say, if we need definitions,
Yeah.
what I would suggest is it's a policy, so flexibility is still built in. But I just said, do we really need the confusion?
Mr. You know, on the previous one, on the tenant protection ordinance, there was a minimum unit count, and perhaps it would make sense to apply that in this case as well. And in that case, it was for 3 or more units. So we would say that the inclusionary housing policy would apply in cases where there's 3
So
or more
you would be
units.
talking more along the lines of townhouses and things like that?
Right.
Okay, I think that clarification is all we need, but it probably should be written somewhere.
Yep. I mean, if you can build that into a motion, it will get written that way.
Well, Councilmember Troutman is an attorney. I bet he can verbalize that the most professional as any of us.
And I just want to make sure I understand, and maybe Mr. Stark, if you could rephrase the clarification that this is to clarify that property sold at cost.
No, I think what we came up with was that owners earning less than 150% of the AMI in housing units of 3 or more. So it's going to be more directly related to construction of townhomes as opposed to a single-family residence.
So this is for properties. I'm sorry, I'm just trying to follow. For properties that are for units of 3 or more,
I believe that was a suggestion that. Yeah, John, do you have something
actually,
better?
I'd feel comfortable with 5 or more.
5 or more?
5 or more.
Okay.
Okay, so for properties on which there are 5 or more units to be constructed, shall
Ownership.
for ownership.
Right.
I think, I think just period, 5 or more period would be. And that's your call. That's a policy call.
So this is so in the section where it says make at least 20% of all housing units affordable, either to renters earning less than 60% of the area median income or owners earning less than 100% of AMI for housing developments of 5 units or more. Is that all right?
You know, actually, my suggestion, and I think this makes it easier, would just be to do this in the motion. So we've got the adopt the resolution approving an inclusionary affordable housing policy, I would just add related to developments of 5 housing units or more.
So it would apply to all rent. So if somebody were to build a fourplex, if there was a fourplex that was built that was a rental, there wouldn't be an obligation for them?
There's a differentiation between owning and renting, though.
There is, but not the way, if I understood Mr. Stark, the way Mr. Stark just described it. Because he just said, that's the policy as to 5 units or more. Sorry to parse,
But
I guess
that, what we were talking about is for ownership. Fourplexes normally aren't going to be sold for ownership.
Or no,
Yeah. And part of the reason I come up with 5 is because of the 20% number. We can come up with 20% of 5.
okay,
It's hard to come up with 20% of 3.
very good. All right. Well, with that being said, I would move that we adopt a resolution approving an inclusionary affordable housing policy for units of, or for developments of 5 units or more.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Yeah, yeah, that'll work.
Mr. Mayor, I would just suggest
See, I'm an
that,
attorney, I'm not an accountant. You can't be doing this to me, okay?
we're pioneering some of this stuff, and I don't doubt on many of these things we may end up having to come back to you in the months to come to do some tweaking as they enter into practical usage.
If perhaps the motion isn't terribly artful, we all know what we're talking about. So,
Yep.
so if there's another discussion, at least we'll be able to start from there. All right.
Mayor, may I make a modest suggestion? Would it be appropriate if we modified the language and passed it's already, we don't have to pass, it's already been passed. I
Right.
believe, if that was an affirmation on behalf of the mayor's part.
It was an affirmation.
But then we could just pass the modified language in the consent calendar, if that's necessary.
Yes, we can bring something back next month. There would be, acceptance of modified language, and we would just put that in the consent calendar.
Okay. So it was moved, seconded, and passed
Yeah.
with some future considerations to be had.
Do we need to move that we just
No.
add it?
And I'd just like to make a couple comments on this.
Sure.
Again, I don't want to repeat what I said with the 90-day ordinance, but this is one of many tools that we are looking at and putting in place to make sure that we have a diversity of affordable housing options for renters and homeowners alike. So there's a lot of different things that we're doing. And this is one that's focused on taking into account when we have new developments in Richfield, making sure that they are affordable. So I had several residents come to me with the term inclusionary housing and the understanding that that also means inclusion of accessibility issues. And so a clarification point that I wanted to make is that when we were looking at this, we were focused on inclusion of affordable housing. And we have talked to staff about this, and it is in the update that I'm just going to read it verbatim. The policy applies to the inclusion of affordable housing units. In the coming months, staff will be researching and drafting a policy regarding the inclusion of physically accessible housing units and amenities. So, one, thank you so much to our residents for bringing that issue up, because as Lee stated, essentially the vacancy rate for accessible units is 0. And 2, just letting you know and reiterating that we will be looking at that, and it is on our list of what's next. What are we going to be looking at after we pass this, and what the next steps are looking like. So I'm really happy that we're passing this. This is something that we have done for years in practice, but really it was not codified in policy, and now it is. And it's clear, and like staff has said, this is uncharted territories in some ways, and we'll be making changes. So again, thank you to the residents. Thank you to all the folks who worked on this to the staff, and this is just the first of several steps in addressing our affordable housing crisis.
Next item is city manager's report.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, I have no report to make.
Claims and payroll.
Mr. Mayor, alcalde, quiero mover claims and payroll.
Hmm?
You just say
Oh, second. All in favor?
Aye.
Claims and payroll passes. There being no further business, I will adjourn this city council meeting.